Why do you come to us?
The humans are returning. They're hunting us.
You do not know the sea.
We will learn your ways.
If you want to live here, you have to ride.
We must protect the people.
Let's get it done.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my Avatar: The Way of Water movie review. It's been 13 years since the first movie, but you know, never to bet against James Cameron. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. But it has been 13 years since the first movie came out. I mean, post all the memes. It's been so long. James Cameron said one of the reasons why it took so long is because they assembled a writer's room to write all 4 of the sequels, because there's 5 movies total in the franchise. And then when he actually did start filming the movie, they started filming the second 2 movies, Avatar 2 and Avatar 3, back to back. So they filmed 3 at the same time, meaning it'll come out way sooner. But on top of all that, he had to invent a lot of the technology that he used in actually filming the movie. It was kind of the same deal when the first movie came out. You may remember they were hyping up 3D technology using the movie because he used these special brand new cameras at the time. And because he did things that way, it cost so much money to make. But all the money wound up on screen. Like visually, the movie looks amazing. Talking about Avatar: The Way of Water. It'd been so long since I'd seen the first movie, it reminded me of my experience when I saw the first one, because 3D was a big deal back then. Even though the story of the movie is meant to be very basic, South Park did a parody soon after called Dances with Smurfs because the plot is very similar to the plot of Dances with Wolves. But just on a visual level, the spectacle was amazing, so it was a great experience in the theater. But the actual writing of the second movie, I felt like it was a little bit better, a little more dynamic than the first movie. I mean, it's still within the tone of the first movie, but overall, the visual spectacle of the film was amazing. Like, it was a great experience. So if you do have the chance to see the movie this weekend, be sure to go see it on the biggest screen possible. I would recommend IMAX. If you can't see it in 3D, see it in 3D. Overall, the movie serves as a nice escalation of the first movie, a deepening of the lore, because they raised a lot of interesting ideas during the first film that they start to get into during this film, and I suspect they'll spend the rest of the sequels completely fleshing out. They also do a pretty decent job during the setting up the third movie. Like, obviously, this is meant to be a big franchise film. He's kind of Star Warsing his movies, where you start with the characters and follow a family across their timeline. Like, you start with young Anakin Skywalker, and you end with Luke Skywalker. It'll probably be a similar path with the future Avatar movies, even though you've probably been seeing all the funny posts of James Cameron yelling about Marvel movies, about Star Wars movies, like, please do not compare my movies to Star Wars to Marvel. They're completely different.
Technology you're using as a filmmaker. But I would
The audience doesn't give a
But in the real sense, he's kind of building his own franchise, following some of the similar beats that a lot of the Star Wars movies do follow over time. They're saying the movie cost about $250 million to make. Like I said, all the technology he created, all the time he spent building the world of the film. Visually, the movie looks completely different from the first film. Obviously, they travel to a water-based location in the ocean this time with a water-based tribe. To make another Star Wars metaphor, George Lucas said that when he was designing his different trilogies, the original trilogy and then the prequels, he said when he moved on to the prequels and was doing a completely different part of the timeline, he wanted it to look and feel very different, which is why the architecture, the technology, the planets they go to seems so different. And it's kind of the same vibe with Avatar 2. Like, it looks very different, feels different from the first movie, while still carrying forward a lot of references and Easter eggs to the first film. Like, there are a lot of returning characters, but they introduce a bunch of big twists so they feel like very different versions of the characters. The movie does address the big time jump from the end of the first film. Like, Jake and Neytiri have this large family that's traveling with them now. They've been really busy in the time we haven't seen them. But in that same way, James Cameron said that's his plan for the future of the franchise too. So like Avatar 3, Avatar 4, Avatar 5 will all feel and look very different from this second movie. If you're a big fan of the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, there's actually a funny joke, because back in 2004-2005, when they were getting ready to release Avatar: The Last Airbender animated series, they actually found out that James Cameron owned the rights to the name Avatar because he'd been planning on making that movie for a long time. So remember, this is like years and years before the first movie came out. So Mike and Brian, who were making the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, had to add The Last Airbender to the title, otherwise it would have just been called Avatar. So the joke now is that if James Cameron names Avatar 3 Avatar the Firebending Masters, like goes to a new element, kind of like Avatar's different elements, then we riot. Basic synopsis of the movie, though, is that when it picks up, Jake Sully and Neytiri have formed this family. They're doing everything they can to stay together. Like, they mention the word family almost more than Vin Diesel does in the Fast and Furious movies. However, they must leave their home, explore the regions of Pandora. When an ancient threat resurfaces, Jake must fight a difficult war against the humans. So there are like a couple different things going on, but the main villain of the film is Quaritch. He's come back in an Avatar body, the same way that Jake was able to survive, jumping to an Avatar body at the end of that movie. Within the world of the film, it's meant to be about 14 years since the end of the first movie, which is why some of their children are so much older. Some of them are biological, some of them are adopted. That's why they have the human child with them. Even though they all have different roles during the movie, probably the most important one everyone's going to be talking about is Sigourney Weaver's character, who's playing their daughter, Kiri. Her original character, Grace Augustine, died during the events of the first movie, and her consciousness was basically absorbed into the Eywa creature, this giant world mind creature. Their daughter, Kiri, has a special connection with Eywa that the other children don't have. And she has a special connection with the Grace Augustine character, like they explain why she sounds exactly like Sigourney Weaver in the first movie. Like I said, during this movie there's a deepening of the lore of the mythology that will continue to grow in future films. As you can see during all the trailer footage, the Stephen Lang Quaritch character is a nice escalation version of the character, like the humans have escalated their tactics, as the war with the natives for the Unobtainium becomes an even bigger deal. The way they actually treat the story of this movie, though, is that it's meant to feel kind of like a standalone adventure. In the next movie, when it picks up, sounds like it'll have at least a small time jump and will be like a completely different thing, which is why I made the Star Wars metaphor, where each of the different trilogies take place during very different parts of the timeline. Like the last couple of movies will take place much later in the timeline, when their children become adults. Most of the major characters that survived the events of the first movie are back in some form. Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana were great as Jake and Neytiri. It does seem like the movie is kind of transitioning them to more of a background role just because their children seem like they're going to become much bigger characters in the future films. I've already talked about Sigourney Weaver coming back. She actually jokes about what James Cameron made her do, kind of tricking her into the role to begin with in a fun way, like not in a deceitful way. But because she was playing one of the children, she actually joked that when James Cameron makes movies, he doesn't move in half measures, so he trained everybody in everything that they needed to do during the movie, even though it's all motion capture.
You can hear Jim under the water too, so he directs you through these sound systems in the tank. And I wouldn't come up. It was easier for me to stay down there because it was a long way up, so I would just spend hours down there.
So like Sigourney Weaver had to learn to hold her breath for more than 6 minutes underwater. She had to learn a bunch of parkour like a bunch of the other younger characters. It'd be like bringing Mark Hamill back as a version of young Luke Skywalker in motion capture, but then making him do like all this army training to get in super shape to do everything the younger actors would do. I've already talked about Stephen Lang coming back as a version of Quaritch. He was great. He's not meant to be the exact same version of Quaritch. Like, the whole idea is that his consciousness was transferred, so he has all the memories of the original Quaritch, but he's kind of like this new version of the character. All the new actors playing their kids did a great job. I feel like they'll get bigger roles in future sequels. A lot of James Cameron regular actors came back that you see in his other movies, like Kate Winslet plays a character during this. Cliff Curtis also plays the chief of the Water Tribe. He was great. The music, the score was great. So even though we've been making a bunch of jokes about this movie trying to be relevant 13 years later, like how much do we care about the first movie? Just like everybody trying to clown on the franchise, the whole joke is really that you never bet against James Cameron. And I feel like this movie will hold true, even though, like James Cameron himself said, the movie will probably not turn a profit because it costs so much money to make. I think he said it'd have to earn like $1 billion in order to turn a big profit. I do not think that it's going to earn as much money as the first movie did, just because of everything that's been going on in the world and the box office behavior of the past couple of years. It's just generally a bad time for movies in general. Like, a lot of people just have not gone back to theaters yet. But overall, the movie is pretty solid. I only wish the last Terminator movie had been this solid, but to be fair, like, you can't blame that on James Cameron because he only helped a little bit, like he was very loosely involved with the making of that movie. The vast majority of his time and energy the past 13 years have been spent crafting the Avatar franchise, and that's why I say it all feels like it wound up on screen. Like, all the money, all the time, the energy, it all wound up showing on screen. So that's why it felt like such a great experience, even if the story was still pretty simple by comparison to something like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Avatar 2 isn't meant to be like a multiverse movie or anything like that. I just make the comparison because the actual plot of Everything Everywhere All at Once was way, way more complicated to follow than something like the Avatar franchise. That being said, it was amazing. Like, it was an amazing version of what Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness should have been. Everyone post your reactions to the movie in the comments below. Please don't post spoilers on this video. I'll post a longer breakdown video with Easter eggs, everything for the movie later this week after it actually comes out. And because they filmed Avatar 3 back-to-back with Avatar 2, big reminder, they plan on releasing it in December 2024, so we wanted to wait that long for it to come out. but it's meant to feel completely different, look completely different environment from what happens in Avatar 2. I just did a huge video for the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse trailer. You can click here to watch that, and click here for my video on the Game of Thrones Jon Snow sequel series. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.